Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. I've been shooting suppressed a lot lately, and I've kind of had an ongoing series here on the channel about different aspects of suppressed shooting. And so in the newest video in that series, we're going to talk about cleaning your suppressed firearms, because one thing about shooting suppressed, this thing on the end of your gun puts a lot more back pressure into your gun, meaning that those gases and carbon fouling that would normally escape out the muzzle end up coming through, especially on a direct impingement system like the AR-15. They come back into the system, making your gun dirtier. Look at this bolt carrier group. That's from just 2 magazines through this Mark 18. If it didn't have the suppressor on it, it would not be that dirty. And so I'm going to show you guys how I like to clean my suppressed rifles, because if you want them to keep running reliably, it does help to keep them clean and well oiled. And I mean, you can run a gun like this a lot longer than this 2 mags before you have to clean it, but you're just gonna have to do some more cleaning if you're running suppressed all the time. That's all there is to it. So I thought this might be helpful. Now, you can do what I originally did and collect all kinds of different cleaning tools and gear over a number of years, or you can get everything in one spot, like this gun cleaning kit that was just sent to me from Gloryfire. So we're going to be using this kit today to clean the Mark 18. If you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed, and let's begin. This video is brought to you by Stopbox USA. Safe storage and very quick access. Yep, that's exactly what you get here. There's no electronics. It is all mechanical. It's a great way to keep your pistol safe from hands that you don't want to be on it, but it's also very quick to be able to get into it. I don't think there's anything faster. Just input your code, push down, thumb, and you have your firearm. I don't think that there's anything on the market faster than that. There's a couple things to keep in mind before we get started. The first thing you want to do before cleaning your firearm is clear it. Take the magazine out, lock your bolt to the rear, make sure that there is nothing in there, and that your firearm is totally safe. Now, I'm going to disassemble this really quick. YouTube doesn't like us showing that, so we're going to do that off camera. Hopefully you already know how to, all you really got to do is take the upper off the lower, pull the bolt carrier group and charging handle out.
A few moments later.
Now that we've got the firearm disassembled, we are going to take the suppressor off of the upper. You don't really need to clean a, center fire rifle suppressor, at least not hardly ever. The pressures that go through that basically will do that for you. And it's going to be a lot easier to run a Boresnake or a cleaning rod down this barrel without a suppressor on the end. So we have the Mark 18 broken down into its major components here. We will break down this bolt carrier group farther when we get to it. And you can see, like I said, that is 2 mags, 60 rounds right there. Made it that dirty, which kind of just highlights what I was talking about cleaning your suppressed firearms just probably more often, because they do get dirtier faster. Now, we're going to clean it using this Gloryfire gun cleaning kit. This was sent to the channel, and we're going to try it out today. It basically comes with everything that you could possibly need tool-wise for like every caliber. I mean, it's even got a little bottle to put your oil in. It's got all your cleaning rods, your brushes, all of the stuff that it took me a long time to collect over years, all in one place. It's at a great price. I am going to put a link down in the description. You get 10% off with my code, which will also be in the description. So, I mean, this thing even comes with the patches that you need. Pretty sweet. The only other thing you're going to need besides all these tools and stuff is some kind of solvent and some kind of oil. And I'm old school. I've been using Hoppes for years, and it still works great for me. I know that there are new things on the market that people love, but Hoppes has always worked just fine for me, and my firearms are totally reliable. So why mess with something that works just fine? I usually start with the lower, so and kind of get these other things out of the way a little bit. The lower is probably the quickest and easiest part to clean. So we're going to take some of these patches here. You do use a lot of patches when cleaning your guns. You want good cotton ones that'll soak up some kind of solvent really easily and not leave a bunch of lint all over your gun. So let's open this up. And I like to just kind of dab it on here. And then we're just going to go through the lower. And we're just going to kind of clean all of the carbon and fouling and debris and anything that's in here off. I usually go over it once with the solvent. And then I go over it again with a dry one just to get all the wetness out of there and make sure that my gun's all good. Take your trigger, run it forward. This is a Geisley 2-stage SDE trigger. And you basically just want to get all up in here as good as you can. I like to use Q-tips to really get in these hard to reach areas. Getting the mag well, you do get a lot of like carbon blowback into there when you're shooting suppressed. Everything just gets a little bit dirtier than it does if you're not shooting suppressed. And so you just kind of got to be a little bit more thorough. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just trying to keep your firearm reliable and running. I used to be really OCD about it, and now I just make sure I get it pretty decent and then lube it up good, and that'll keep it running just fine. You're going to notice on the places where there's seams and stuff between the upper and the lower, pressure kind of blasts, gunk out of those seams. So I try to get around the edges and all that. We're going to use some Q-tips inside here to just help get into the hard to reach places that your fingers just don't fit in. And we're just going to do the best we can. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to keep your gun running reliably. No reason to be too OCD with it, but at the same time, there is something nice about having a nice, clean gun. That is for sure. Geisley recommends using their ALG Go Juice for the trigger. So I'm just going to use that on all of the contact surfaces here. Just going to put a little drop there. A little drop there. And the sear there. We're going to put a little bit where your pins are, and we're going to call that good. Run it a couple times, and the lower is done. So we set the lower aside, and now we're going to work on the upper. We're going to take this out of the Gloryfire gun cleaning kit. This is a chamber brush specifically for an AR. So the thin part will go down your barrel, while this will clean your star chamber there, where your lugs lock up with your bolt carrier group. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to dip it in some solvent, get that thing nice and wet. Try not to spill it doing this behind the camera here. And we're just going to kind of run this up and down in the chamber a bit. Turn it side to side and just try to get that give it as good a clean as we can. Don't worry about brass hurting your barrel. Brass is much softer than the steel of your barrel, which is why they make all these cleaning things out of brass. You don't have to worry about it damaging your rifle. So after we cleaned out that chamber in there, now we're going to take some patches and just clean inside the upper receiver really well here, kind of the same way as we did with the lower. Although I can guarantee you that the upper is going to be a lot dirtier than the lower was. But let's take a look here. I just kind of start in here with my fingers. You just kind of want to get everything out. You can see how dirty that is. And like I said, this is from 2 magazines, 60 rounds only, which just gives you an idea of how dirty your gun gets when you shoot suppressed. It is one of the downsides to shooting suppressed, but you know what? The upsides outweigh the downsides, in my opinion. We're going to continue to use new patches in here, basically until we've got it to where we're not coming out so black each time. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. With an AR-15, it'll run a little bit dirty just fine. The main thing is that it's got plenty of lube. It is a platform that likes to be wet. Doesn't everything. And so yeah, just kind of keep doing this until it's coming out not so black. Get your finger up in that chamber there, everywhere else. And then I do the same thing that I do with the lower, where after I've cleaned it enough with wet patches with solvent, then I'll run a dry one just to kind of dry it off and get whatever is remaining in there. Now again, Q-tips really do help for getting in the hard to reach areas around your gas tube. I like to use them to get in there and just make sure I get all that black gunk out. You can see how dirty it is. I mean, it is just amazing how dirty your gun gets when you're shooting suppressed all the time. Not really a whole lot you could do to get around that. I mean, there are, you know, low back pressure suppressors these days, but it is what it is. Once you've got it as clean as you are comfortable with, a big thing that I always try to remember is to close these bottles of solvent when I'm not using them. I've spilled them all over the place, way too many times to count. But then, like I said, I'd like to take a dry patch and just kind of run it all over everything one more time. One little thing that I've found that works really well to get underneath your gas tube is to use one of these brushes, just kind of as a tool to push the patch around in here. You can kind of get it around the gas tube in there. I think it helps to get the places where you just can't really get your fingers into. Now we're going to clean our bore. This kit comes with all of the bore cleaning tools that you could need for any caliber of gun that you possibly have, which is pretty sweet. And again, like I said, I will put a link with a 10% discount code in the description. But just for the sake of brevity of this video, so it doesn't go too long, I'm actually just going to run a Boresnake today. Honestly, it's what I generally do anyway. One of these will just get down your barrel really easily. These also work just fine for that. You don't really want to oil your barrel, but what I like to do is I'll take one of these Boresnakes and just put a couple of drops of this. It's literally, you know, Boresnake CLP from Hoppe. Just put a couple of drops on the part of it where it goes from really thin to, you know, a little bit wider, the actual size of your bore. And just run this down the barrel a few times. It's going to come out the other end. And you're going to pull it through. Just do that, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. At this point, your upper receiver is clean. Now, your muzzle device is not if you're running suppressed, and that's okay. I don't worry about my muzzle device. It's gonna get black shooting suppressed because this thing is inside of the suppressor. I don't worry about cleaning that one bit. In fact, the blacker it is, just shows how much you actually use your weapons. I usually do the bolt carrier group last just because it's the part that's gonna need the most cleaning. So let's get our charging handle done really quick. Very simple here. You just need to basically wipe it off. Again, use some solvent and then go back over it with a dry patch or rag. I mean, you can see even the charging handle gets pretty dirty when you're shooting suppressed. And the bolt carrier group is the main thing that needs to be cleaned. I mean, everything's the main thing really. So we're gonna break this down into its components here. So here we have our major parts of the bolt carrier group. And honestly, we're just gonna do the same thing we've been doing, solvent and then dry. So I always just kind of start with the small parts. It's just kind of the way I've always done things. So, and even, I mean, even this little pin, I just like to get it all clean because might as well. My whole thing is this, is if you clean your stuff often enough, then it's never going to be so dirty that it's like ridiculously hard to clean where all the carbon is just caked on there and you have to try to scrape it all off. And so it's hard to find the time sometimes. I totally get that. But I do try to clean my guns after each time I shoot them. It doesn't always happen. And sometimes I definitely need to like catch up on a few. Right now I've got a bunch of dirty guns that need to be cleaned. And so I felt like the Mark 18 was a good one to do this video on. And the bolt and carrier are going to be the most important parts. And this is where I actually do use a cleaning brush. So I'm going to pick this one with the plastic bristles because I know that it can't damage anything. Although honestly, I don't think any of those would damage it, but still. I've just always liked to use plastic bristles on these. I would just rather not take that risk. And we're going to kind of just scrub this whole bolt here. Especially this tail end gets really dirty. And so we're just going to scrub the hell out of it for a minute. Try to get in everywhere that we can. And then once I've gotten some good elbow grease on there, I'm just going to take a rag. Ripped up t-shirts work great, whatever. I'm going to clean it off here and see what it looks like. See if it needs any more real work on it. And again, like I said, this stuff doesn't have to be perfect, but the better you get it, the less it'll build up over time. And so, you know, sometimes my OCD does get the best of me. As you can see, you know, this part is still kind of dirty. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on that right now. And again, Q-tips are your friend for getting into, you know, the hard to reach areas. Like inside of here. Uh-oh, I got something stuck in there. That's not good. But luckily, you can push it out. And there's nothing that you can really do that you can't undo. So don't be afraid to just go to town on this stuff. I really like these MicroBest chrome bolt carrier groups because you can see when it's clean, whereas if you have one that's, you know, black, it's just harder to tell. This to me is good enough though. So let's set that aside and now we'll do the carrier. And again, we are going to use the brush again for this one. I mean, you can do it kind of however you want, but this is how I like to do it. We're just going to give it a good scrub everywhere. Certain areas I like to focus on. I do like to get up underneath the gas key. That area gets pretty dang dirty. But we are just going to scrub this entire thing here as good as we can. We're going to get inside here. You know, just like brushing your teeth, but, you know, brushing your bolt carrier group. And then again, we're just going to take our rag, wipe it all down. And see how it looks and see what areas we need to spend a little bit of more extra time on. So that already looks, I mean, practically brand new, but we're not done yet. This is where Q-tips really kind of come in clutch because what you can't see on the camera right now is the inside of this. And I promise you that it is still pretty dirty. Take a look at that. So we're going to use Q-tips to get all up in here. Inside this end, we're going to go inside the gas key. We're going to come in through the back. I even like to clean this, although it doesn't really matter so much. Again, just like I said, OCD gets the best of me. But I do like to do a pretty thorough job on my bolt carrier group. This chrome sure cleans up nice and pretty. This thing, I mean, it honestly looks brand new again. Sure looks a lot better than it did when we started this video. So now I'm going to show you where to oil everything while we put it back together. And that's another thing that comes in this Gloryfire gun cleaning kit. Besides caliber specific tools for every gun that you have, you can also have one of these bottles, which really is helpful. Fill it up with your favorite gun oil or CLP. And it's nice to have that little needle applicator there. So let's oil this stuff back up and put it back together. One thing that I do like to do is with my bolt here, you have your 3 gas rings. You don't really want, so there's a little notch in each one. See right there? And you don't really want them lined up next to each other. Now, I'm sure it'll run just fine either way. But I always try to just separate those a little bit. It's something that I remember being taught long ago. And even if it is just old FUD lore, it's just something I've kind of always done. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to oil this back up. So now that I've got those gaps in my gas rings separated, I do like to put some oil on the gas rings themselves because that is definitely a major friction point. And then I like to get some oil on this area. I mean, basically anywhere that metal on metal friction happens is where you're going to want some oil. So I'll put a little on here. I even like to get a little bit on the tail there. Just kind of rub it around with my hands a little bit. And I'm going to stick that back in here. You guys know how it goes, right? So extractor on that side, ejector on that side. I'm going to take this. My hands are already covered in oil. Get some oil on that. Stick it in. Turn it. Do the same thing with our firing pin. None of this stuff needs a whole lot of oil. Just enough to kind of, let it slide smoothly without wearing harshly. This goes in easier from the bottom. Drop our firing pin in, and then this pin, firing pin or retaining pin, holds everything together. That goes in the hole there. And then before we stick this bolt carrier group back in the upper, we're going to put oil along these rails. There's 4 rails, and then I like to put some on the top of there too, and then I just kind of move it around and use my hand to get the whole rest of the thing just light coat of oil on it. I think it helps everything run nice and smooth. You want a little oil on your charging handle as well. Again, anywhere metal on metal is going to like rub back and forth when you're using your firearm. You just want lubrication on all those parts to prevent, excessive wear. And just keep your firearm running nice and smooth. I love the way it feels when I put it together after cleaning and oiling it, and everything is super smooth. Charging handle is going to go in the little notch there. Then we're going to get our oil on here that I mentioned. Make sure it gets where we want it to be. Kind of give it a whole little deal. Make sure that your bolt is sticking out the end so that it doesn't catch when you try to put it in your upper. Doing all this stuff from behind the camera is not as easy as it is without it, but there we go. Now we're going to put it back on our lower, and our gun is pretty much clean at this point. So here we are. Everything's back together. I always like to rack it a few times. Just run my trigger, charging handle, see how it all feels. And it all feels really good. When your gun is clean and freshly oiled, man, it just feels nice. And so I like to keep my guns clean and freshly oiled if I can. And when you're shooting suppressed all the time, that does probably mean that you're going to be cleaning them a little bit more often than you did before you started shooting suppressed. So I'm actually very impressed with this Gloryfire gun cleaning kit here. I mean, this had everything I needed in it. So again, there will be a link in the description with a 10% discount code. I think you get, honestly, that kit costs less than what I paid for all the gun cleaning stuff that I've collected over the years. It pretty much has it all there, like everything you need, which is pretty sweet. So check that link out if you want to pick up a gun cleaning kit. You'll be able to keep your guns just as clean as I do. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a like. Please give me a like. Let me know down in the comments, how often do you clean your suppressed firearms? And if you have any questions for me or for anybody else in the comments that might, have an answer for you, let us know those questions down there too. I like to have a community and we can all help each other. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.